Imagine waking up one day, you go outside and check your mail, and you get a letter from your title company. You open the letter, and it congratulates you for selling your plot of land in Tucson, Arizona for $200,000. The only problem is that you never listed it for sale. This actually happened to a man back in 2023. His parcel of land was sold without his knowledge. More and more unsuspecting homeowners are becoming victims of a real estate scam where the deed of their property is transferred away, literally right from under them. So I found out about this through a Reddit thread that I was reading last week, and I thought it would be good to share with you that while there are many positive benefits of AI these days in our society, there are also some drawbacks like these scams. Scammers are using high-tech methods to not only impersonate a homeowner, but also fake deeds, different forms of ID, notary signatures, and other documents in order to steal homes from people without their knowledge. The FBI reported that there were 9,521 complaints for real estate fraud in 2023, with losses totaling over $145 million. And I feel like even if you watch this video in 6 months from now, this trend and situation definitely is just gonna get worse. Today, I wanted to share with you guys 3 real stories of deed fraud and how the scammers actually make this work. I also want to educate you on the 3 most vulnerable stages of the real estate process where this could happen so you know what to look out for. The first case is a Los Angeles mansion listed for $137.5 million, and as of recent, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, wants to buy it. The only problem is that it sits in the middle of a legal battle because of, you guessed it, a scammer, so the sale has been halted indefinitely. The legal owner of the property is a limited liability company by the name of 594 Mapleton LLC, which kind of sounds like Maple Story. But anyways, they bought the mansion known as Spelling Manor from a British billionaire back in 2019. This company then put the mansion back on the market in 2022, but that's when the story here gets a little bit more bizarre. A couple randomly came out of the woodwork. Their names are Murga and Nicholas White, and they claim that the mansion is indeed theirs. According to the documents, quote, they fraudulently filed a deed on the house with the Los Angeles County in June of 2024, and this has placed the property in legal limbo as the case moves through the courts. So what this essentially means is that this couple forged a deed document that made it look like the house was transferred to their name. And this is a pretty common scam that's not only happening with mansions, but also with smaller properties as well as vacant lots. So here's how it works. First, the scammer needs to gather all the information about the target property, like the address, the parcel description, and the current owner's name. Now, this is usually pretty easy because it's publicly available through county records. Second, they will create a fake deed and forge a signature of the current owner or company that owns the property. AI has been really helping in this regard because it's enabling these scammers to forge documents, IDs, and even create deepfakes of the victims. According to the president of Florida Title and Trust, scammers will even create deepfakes to go on Zoom calls to prove that they are indeed the person they are trying to impersonate. If the realtor or the person on the other end isn't paying enough attention, they could easily be fooled and then therefore think that that property actually belongs to the scammer. Once the scammer has created a fake deed, they move on to step number 3, which is that they need some sort of notary stamp, and this can usually be forged. After that, step number 4, the fake deed is sent to the county recorder, and since many of these recording offices aren't verifying identities at this point, as long as the document looks good, it can be accepted and recorded. And that's when step 5 occurs, the transfer of ownership. The thief will then transfer the ownership of that property to either themselves or a fictitious entity. If it is a fictitious entity, they'll eventually transfer it again to their own name at some point. Now, once the scammer has the ownership rights to this land, they can sell or mortgage the property. So let's actually listen to what the FBI has to say about what they may do next.
The bad actor might send out unsolicited emails to unsuspecting realtors. They want a cash deal within weeks. They've sold land that doesn't even belong to them.
In many cases, scammers will make up some fake story about how they need the cash fast. Perhaps their wife is sick, their dog has a gambling problem. Just kidding about the dog, but the idea is that they make up some sob story about why they're willing to take a lower price in order for a fast deal. The scammers can get 10%, 20%, 50%, or in some cases, the entire price of the property, and then poof, they're gone with the money. In a bigger case like the Los Angeles Spelling Manor mansion, the rightful owners are now stuck in a really hard place, a costly and time-consuming legal battle to clear the fraudulent claim off the property and restore their own ownership. So we can already see that there are so many ways that this is happening with artificial intelligence. And so some of these examples I can think of, they could create deepfake videos, they could do voice clones, or they could just, generate images and identities using public facing data that's available on the internet. I recently actually saw a scary TikTok video where the scammers actually pretended to be a woman's daughter that was being held hostage.
I pick up the phone and I hear my daughter's voice and it says, "Mom," and she's sobbing. And I was, "What happened?" And she's like, "Mom, I messed up," and she's sobbing and crying. And then I hear a man's voice say, "Put your head back, lie down." And then I'm like, wait, what's going on?
Basically, in that clip, the mom didn't even know that it wasn't actually her daughter. Like, she actually thought that it was 100% her voice.
And you have absolutely no doubt in your mind that that was her voice.
Oh, 100% her voice. It was completely her voice. It was her inflection. It was the way she would have cried. I never doubted for 1 second it was her.
Now, the good news is that the daughter was actually completely safe from any harm, just upstairs in the safety of their own house. But the mom was completely fooled into thinking that her daughter had been taken. And these AI scams can easily be fallen victim to, especially by older folks who might not be able to tell the difference between an AI type voice and a real voice. In fact, even my dad, who's on the older side, this past week, we had to log into the United Airlines website. And so he actually got a call from the automated system by United Airlines for two-factor authentication. And what I found really interesting was that he actually started talking to the automated robot voice thinking it was a real person on the other end. And that was pretty scary to me because he didn't really understand that the automated voice giving him the two-factor authentication code wasn't a real person. Like, he was interacting with it like it was a real person. So before I get into the second case, I just want to share that one of the takeaways that moving forward in life that we should really be mindful of is that AI is going to be a huge part of it no matter what. So we need to be skeptical of anything that doesn't seem like it's right or is a little bit fishy or might have some red flags. Our second case today that I wanted to cover is William Gordon. Now, this is actually the man from the introduction of this video. He bought a lot in 1999 and wanted to build his retirement home on it. He paid $76,500 for that lot and has been paying regular mortgage payments on it since then. Still though, in March of 2023, 24 years later, the Tucson, Arizona lot was sold for $200,000 to unsuspecting buyers. The scammer is still unidentified, and Gordon went through a huge headache to even get his land back. From the article, it says that, quote, in Gordon's case, he was pulled in many directions over countless phone calls and had a hard time getting a straight answer on how to move forward. The county said, all you have to do is just undo this, he said, but nobody seemed to know how to undo this. The FBI has since reported a 500% increase in vacant land fraud over the last 4 years, but what I think is more important is what happens after the scam. Because the question of where the liability falls is rather complicated. The title company should technically cover this type of fraud because title insurance is designed to protect against cases like these, but I'm sure there's still a headache to deal with when it comes to filing a claim. In Gordon's case, he actually had to hire a legal team, which cost him $9,000 to just settle this case. The title insurance ended up refunding the unsuspecting buyers, and Gordon finally got his property back after some time. But in addition to the $9,000 that he had to pay for a legal team, it says, quote, that Old Republic Title Insurance paid off Gordon's remaining mortgage balance and property taxes during the sales process and demanded that he pay them back $11,000. Gordon ended up taking money out of his retirement account to pay Old Republic off, so I don't know about you, but this just sounds like an awful situation altogether. So I guess the problem is that not only do you have to deal with a scammer, but now you have to deal with the repercussions of that scam, which could be a long legal process as well as extra money out of your pocket. All right, case number 3 today involves a man named Daniel Koenigsberg who returned to the parcel of land that he actually acquired decades ago, only to find out that somebody had been building a house on his property. Now, this was a pretty big story back in 2022, but essentially what happened was that his parcel of land was actually sold to a developer in October of 2022 without him knowing. Those developers started building a house on the property and even had buyers for said house that had not yet been completed. Obviously confused, Daniel Koenigsberg sued the developers for $2 million, seeking to void the sale, demolish the property, and restore the parcel of land to its original state. Now, it's still unclear how the scammer got this piece of land, but essentially what we know is that someone claimed to be Daniel and sold the lot to the developer. The developer thought it was then theirs to basically work on, so they started building a house to sell on the property. Now, this case itself went through a huge legal battle for about a year and a half, but I am happy to report that this case has a happy ending. A settlement happened earlier this year where Daniel Koenigsberg would receive an undisclosed sum. The developer got to get a clean title for the land, and they were able to finish the home and deliver it to the buyers who ultimately wanted that home in the first place. As for the scammer, there was no resolution, but at least there was a win-win-win for the other parties involved. In all three of these cases, we can see that fraudulent documents are very easy to obtain, and oftentimes the biggest issues arise when the owner of the land lives physically in a different location from the property itself. In the case of Daniel Koenigsberg, he never checked on the property. He actually had to find out from a neighbor that someone was building a house on his property before he actually went there and realized what was happening. And in a lot of the scam cases that are being reported, the owner often doesn't live in the same state as the property in question. In fact, it probably benefits the scammer if the owner lives in a different state, because then they can carry on their scam without anybody knowing. So now that we have some crazy stories of this deed fraud, we actually should still go over the 3 stages of the real estate process you need to know when navigating buying a house to understand how this fraud can happen. For the sake of this video, we're going to just focus on what happens after you put in an offer on the home, you've negotiated and secured financing, and now you're in the logistical stage of the home being transferred to you. These next steps are the most vulnerable steps of the process where fraud could happen, and it all has to do with how the house or land is physically going to be transferred. Starting with step 1, title search. So a title search is when the title company on record will perform a search of the property, making sure that your prospective house is free and clear of any unpaid taxes or liens on the property. This is also when title insurance is typically purchased by the lender and buyer, and that protects you against undiscovered issues, like in today's case, forgeries or scams. Then it's step 2. If there are no problems with title, you'll then check for liens. Liens are just legal claims on the property, so think unpaid taxes. The government might place a lien on your home, and this would impact your ability to manage and transfer your asset until the tax is paid. Basically, think of a lien like a hold against your property until it's resolved. If you search the property up and it has liens against the property, these liens usually have to be resolved before a sale can typically happen. If the title and lien stages look good, then you can then sign the deed, and that's when step number 3 happens, the deed transfer. So the deed is the document that transfers the ownership from the seller to the buyer, and at closing, both parties need to sign the deed, which is then notarized, and that essentially transfers ownership. It's these 3 steps, the title, the lien, and the deed transfer, that the scammers will target, because they're usually somewhat easy to bypass because the parties that are involved are usually disconnected. And frankly, a lot of the offices that deal with these steps in particular are rather archaic. A lot of them are still done by hand, by older people, and it could take a lot of time before anyone knows anything is up. I don't know about you, but if you ever go into your county's recorder's office, they're usually not on the cutting edge of technology, and they still do a lot of things with paper and pencil. Now, one way you can protect yourself is actually by using one of these 3 steps. You can place a lien, which is sometimes known as a friendly lien, on a fully paid off property to basically complicate the process for any scammers. The lien makes the property look like it's burdened by debt or some sort of unsettled claim, so scammers will probably just pass on this house because they would rather just scam an easier target. Now, the good news is that the majority of homes with mortgages have what's known as a mortgage lien, and this is held by a primary lender, and that can just naturally act as a deterrent to scammers. Realistically, a lot of you watching with homes will likely not have to take any preventative measures, but if you do have parcels of land or vacant lots of land not in your area, that's when you want to pay attention, or it's always good to set up some alerts. So let's actually listen to this clip from Good Morning America.
The important thing is to stop it before it happens. The FBI recommends signing up for alerts with your county clerk office so you know immediately if the title to your home or property has been changed. Also, set up alerts whenever somebody searches the address of your property online. But it is just such a warning for anyone, especially if you've been inherited a property. This can really be an issue.
So the moral of the story today is be aware of AI and make sure you tell your parents about these types of scams, and don't let scammers take what you've worked so hard for. Make sure to share this video with others to protect their properties as well. And if you haven't already, make sure to follow me on Twitter or Instagram. I've been posting daily there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video right here on whether or not you should wait until 2025 to buy a house or not. I'll see you guys in that video or a future video on this channel. Stay safe out there. You know, AI, it's freaking crazy. All right, peace.